Yeah, finally.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you are well aware.
I requested.
Are you booked it yet?
Yes, I booked it. I went online and booked it.
You can see in front of the boat Tower Bridge is lifted up. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, that you do have to be very lucky to see the bridge open. So hopefully you can see it, get a nice little view. And to tell you how lucky you are, I've worked on this river for 16 years now, and I've only seen this bridge open
So are you turning around?
about 1,000 times. So you are very lucky. I'm only joking. It doesn't happen very often, honestly. We are in the right place.
At the right time.
You can see the tall passenger boat coming up through the bridge, the Dixie Queen. The Dixie Queen, the biggest passenger boat on the Thames, the largest capacity they need for the bridge to lift up. The bridge, it can lift all the way up. The two centre parts, they do go up to a full 90-degree angle. But they only do that for Her Majesty the Queen. When the Queen goes down through the bridge, they lift it all the way up. She doesn't need to be on a tall-masted boat. She can do it on that wherever she goes. She doesn't come on the river very often. You may have remembered the Diamond Jubilee pageant when there was about 1,000 boats on the Thames for her 60th year. She was on a boat right at the front of the pageant, and when she went through, it was lifted all the way up. When she got the other side of the bridge, they dropped it down at 10%, but they only lifted it all the way up to the Queen. And you see how fast it does go up and down. The mechanics of the bridge, big counterweights, they are in the buttresses, the supports. The bridge was built in 1894, so it is only 120 years old. But they built it to look older, just so it blends in with the castle, the Tower of London, that, as you remember, is next door. The stonework is just put there for decoration. It is an iron and steel bridge. If they take the stonework away, they can still lift the bridge up and down. So it was just put there so it blends in with the castle, the Tower of London. Now again, we have to mention the safety that's on the boat. We're on the way to Greenwich now, and we have to point out once again that we come fully equipped with life-saving equipment. Everything is clearly marked around the boat. Life rafts around the outer roof of the top deck. Life jackets stored in compartments at the front and the back, upstairs, downstairs as well. And in the unlikely event of any sort of emergency, you will hear announcements that come over this PA system. But there's no need to worry, so sit back, relax, enjoy the trip, and any questions, just ask. And along the way, I'll point out a few of the buildings, carry on with the commentary that I was doing down to Tower Pier. As you can see by looking around you now, there isn't too much to point out. But I'll give it a go and hopefully it does add to the trip. Apartment buildings to your left, green glass apartments. These buildings, they are designed to look like something. They built them to look like soldiers that are marching down the Thames. Now, I don't know what medication the designer was on at the time, but that is what they are built to look like. The slanted roof is a cap, a soldier's beret. The square back is a backpack, and the aerial on the top, a rifle and a bayonet. There you go, soldiers. And if you follow the river along to your left, a Victorian apartment building, it's called Oliver's Wharf. This was a warehouse years ago, converted now into apartments. And famous people have lived in this building. Over the years, you've had Robert De Niro, Helen Mirren, and you have had the singer, the actress, Cher, all living in that building. Dame Helen Mirren owned the top floor, the penthouse apartment, and the singer, Cher, lived in the top left-hand corner. And on a sunny day, you would have seen Cher on the balcony at the front. She used to wave for the boats. You don't see her anymore. She doesn't live there today. But before she moved, she wrote a letter complaining to City Cruises because she said that people were turning up at her apartment. Every day she said that she was being harassed. She blamed it on the people on the boats telling the passengers where she lived. And because we'd never stopped pointing out where she lived, she became so fed up, she moved. She moved just around the corner. And it's still on the river. We're now. And you have police boats here to your left, alongside of the pier. This is their base here at Wapping in the East End of London. The Thames River Police, they are the oldest uniformed police force in the world. They date back to 1798 and they're still running today. They started up the police force on the Thames to tackle thieving and piracy because so much of the cargo that was being delivered into London was being stolen. You had all different types of cargo delivered from all over the world, and some of it was very expensive. And a lot of it, well, all of it was stored in these buildings. Left and right of the boat, you would have just seen warehouses storing the cargo that was being delivered. And they say that 30% of that cargo was being stolen. So, to try and tackle the problem, the Thames Police. A pub on your right called the Mayflower. This pub is named after the Pilgrim ship. The ship that left London in the 1600s. Left London, went down the Thames, round the coast of the country, stopping at a few places along the way, but eventually going off to what you now know as the United States. And they believe that the voyage, the famous trip, is started here on your right. Started in Rotherhithe, in South London, the area on your right hand side. They believe that some of the Pilgrim Fathers were local men from South London in Rotherhithe. left-hand side, there's another riverside pub. This one is called the Prospect of Whitby. This is the oldest tidal pub in the tidal part of the Thames. This pub dates back to the 1520s. When they built the pub, it was called the Pelican, but it became so notorious, so famous for criminals, that they nicknamed it the Devil's Tavern, because the criminals that were going in, you'd have pickpockets, thieves and murderers, press gangers, all going into that pub, the Prospect of Whitby, the Devil's Tavern. You would find press gangers in a lot of these riverside pubs. Press gangers, they were going into the pub and they were looking for young men that had too much to drink. They would find them in the pubs, of course, and they would get so drunk, the young men, the press gangers would knock them out. They would hit them on the back of their head. They'd be knocked out and they would be put into boats that were waiting for them outside of the pub. The young men were took down the Thames and they were put onto ships, and they were sent out to sea. They would wake up out at sea. They were press ganged into the Royal Navy. Nobody wanted to join the Navy years ago because the life expectancy was maybe 1 or 2 years. You died in battle, you picked up a horrible disease. So nobody would join. So you were forced by the press gangers to join the Navy. And the sandy coloured buildings to your left with the white arched windows, these were prisons years ago. They used to hold criminals in those buildings. They weren't held for long. They were sent to a different prison at Millbank. Up the river, Millbank Prison. The criminals were given orange suits and that they had letters on their back, POM. They became prisoners of Millbank. The criminals were put onto ships. They sent the criminals away. They sent the criminals to other areas of the Commonwealth because we didn't really know what to do with the criminals. A lot of the time, the criminals were sent to Australia. And the first thing the Australians would see was the letters on their back. POM, spelling out POM. Australians today, they call us the POMs. There is a lot of theories as to why, but one of them is because of the letters on the criminals' backs. Is anybody from Australia on the boat? Nobody? Oh, we'd like to say welcome home there. Now, there is a lot of theories as to why. One of them, they call us pomegranates because you get red faces in the sun. Prisoner of Mother England is another one. Because of the letters on their back, that's a popular theory. Just to your left, you've got narrow apartments, brown and narrow buildings. Look past the old sailing barge there, look at the apartments. The one closest to us is number 13 at Narrow Streets. And that apartment is owned by the singer. The actress, Cher, that is where number 13. Give her a visit. The other end is a pub called the Grapes. This pub was made famous by Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens lived in the attics of that pub, and it's from there he wrote novels Great Expectations and Our Mutual Friends. Both novels written from that pub. Canary Wharf is to your left-hand side. Canary Wharf is, of course, the working complex, the financial district of London. The main building, the one with the pyramid top, the official name of that building is number 1 Canada Square. But you may know it better as the Canary Wharf Tower. Canary Wharf is the name of the whole area, not the building. It stands 850 feet tall, and it used to be the tallest building in the whole of Europe. Nowhere near the tallest building today, but it is the main one in that area. We always recommend to visit Canary Wharf, but remember, you have to bear in mind that it is a working complex. So if you go there Monday to Friday, it's very busy. Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, they say there's well over 100,000 workers. It's only a small area, and as most of the buildings are banks, you find that it is just full up with bankers Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So visit on a weekend. During the week, go during the evening. And the bankers go home. That's when you visit. Underneath the buildings is a massive shopping centre, and it's full up with bars and restaurants as well. So it is a nice place to go, something to eat or drink. But wait till it's quiet. On the weekend, do the shopping of an evening, something to eat or drink. And as you get past Canary Wharf, have a look around you. There is nothing to point out. Look in this part of the Thames. We're in a big straight section now, and it is a riverside apartments. As we get round the next bend, you will be able to see Greenwich. And once you can see Greenwich, I'll tell you as much as I can. I'll point out as much as I can that there is to see and do in the area. Greenwich is a great place to visit. It is a royal borough, a very well kept area. And we always recommend to spend a bit of time in Greenwich. Spend as much time as you've got. We are not the last returning boats, so you can leave the boat, have a look around Greenwich, and then you can get a later boat. We stop at the pier. Then we stay on the pier now for 30 minutes. So you'll have an opportunity to leave and come back with us, or you get the later boat back, and they run every 40 minutes. The last one is at 6:30. So there may be a boat after us, 6:30. Every boat stops at Tower Pier, goes through to Westminster and the London Eye. You can use your ticket on either boat. Don't worry about rushing back for this one. You get any of the boats back throughout the day. And I'll point out as much as I can once we start to get around the bend. start to get around the bend, you can see a lot of Greenwich. Blocking the view of Greenwich at the moment is a cruise ship. It's called the Viking Sun. Come up to London yesterday and it leaves tomorrow afternoon, apparently. Where that cruise ship is sitting is one of the deepest parts of the Thames, in this area, of course. On the high water, which we're near enough on now, on the high tide, there's about 20 metres of water underneath that ship. So on the low tide, there's still about 12 metres of water. And it is a naturally deep part of the Thames. And they turned it into a cruise terminal. The passengers, they join the ship and they get ferried across from Greenwich Pier. They fill the ship up with fuel and fresh water, and then they go back on to somewhere I would imagine a bit more exotic, but they do stay here for a few days. And you'll see a different cruise ship here at Greenwich every few weeks now, all the way through the summer. You'll see different ships. Not just the cruise ships, you'll get big naval ships with aircraft carriers, tall ships, the tall sailing boats. They all stop down here at Greenwich. As it is such a deep part of the Thames, they have the tall ship festivals down here at Greenwich. Once a year they have a festival. They have about 30 tall ships in this area because it is a deep part of the Thames. These are the Viking fleet of ships. We had the Viking Jupiter up here last week. This one's the Viking Sun. The Viking Star is the one that got caught in the storm a couple of months ago. Went out at sea in the storm. You might remember that had to get evacuated. It was all on the news. And we do normally get that one come up the Thames. I'd imagine it won't be here for a little while, so you'll find the other ones here instead. Looking past that ship now, in front of us you've got white buildings on the river. These are the Royal Naval Colleges. This is where they used to train and nurse the Royal Navy. Nowadays it's part of the Greenwich University, the arts and the music part of the university, and they are beautiful buildings. They were designed by Inigo Jones and Sir Christopher Wren. The two domes on top of the buildings, they were practice attempts for the dome of St Paul's Cathedral. So having a nice look around there is always a good thing to do while we sit on the pier. And just next to those buildings there is a maritime museum, and the museum is free to visit. So if you are stopping at Greenwich, it's a brilliant place to go, especially for the children, and it's free of charge. Once you get past this ship, you'll see another tall-masted boat. It's got 3 tall masts, and it's called the Cutty Sark. The Cutty Sark was a famous tea clipper, and it is now permanently at Greenwich. It was built in the 1800s, built in Scotland, and it carried tea into London. Tea was delivered into London years ago by sailing ships like the Cutty Sark, and it was all stored in warehouses that were next to Tower Bridge, called Butler's Wharf. They're still there today as apartment buildings, converted years ago. Once we get past the ship, look at the top of the hill, look past the Cutty Sark. You can now see the green dome, the T-mast and the red ball. That is the Greenwich Observatory. That is where the meridian line passes through Greenwich. That's the point where the east meets the west. And it is also where you get Greenwich Mean Time from, GMT. That is where the whole world sets their clocks. 5 to 1 every day, the red ball, it rises. Gets to 1 o'clock, the ball drops. As the ball drops, it sets. 1 o'clock, GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. 24 time zones around the world. Every one of them is set by GMT. So wherever you go, your time is calculated. It comes back to Greenwich. Greenwich, this is where time begins. Greenwich is at the centre of the universe. And I would imagine that you are impressed. And you are glad you came. But you have arrived, and we are just waiting to get alongside the pier. We've had a bit of an event here on the Thames today, the barge driving event, the race that you might have noticed earlier on with the barges that were being rowed up through the bridges. They started, if you see all that, it started here at Greenwich and it finished at Westminster. So all of the passenger boats that were following the race, they end up back here at Greenwich, and they are sitting alongside the pier. But once we've got a space, we'll get into the pier and you'll be able to leave. Now, we sit on the pier for a short while now. It'll be about 20 minutes that we stay here before we go back.